There has been a rise of anti-Semitic attacks since the October 7th attack by Hamas. Joining us now to discuss is Trevor Loudon, an author, filmmaker, and public speaker. For more than 30 years, he has researched Marxist movements, as well as the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. So, Trevor, it's always to have you on the show. So, a new report shows that there were nearly 2,000 anti-Semitic incidents in the first half of 2024, with a spike following the October 7th Hamas attack. Why do you think this is happening? What is causing this to happen?
Well, it's been driven by several things, and obviously the events in the Middle East are a big part of this. Now, what is happening here is the Chinese, the Iranians, the Qataris, and the Russians want to bring down Israel. And so they are amping up their propaganda operations in the United States, in Western Europe, every bit of anti-Israeli propaganda they can possibly come up with, that Israel killed Charlie Kirk, that Israel is deliberately shooting people coming for food aid. All of these propaganda points are being amped up, and you'll find the sources of them are basically Qatari-backed websites, Russian-backed websites, Iranian-backed websites, etc. And they have targeted heavily, especially American conservatives, because the goal is to split America away from Israel so that Israel can be more effectively destroyed, more quickly destroyed. That's really the bottom line here.
Okay, so the report is also highlighting a surge in incidents on campuses and in schools as well. Why do you think that is?
Well, you're seeing this coming through TikTok. I had a report from a teenage friend in New Zealand the other day telling me about how her friends are all anti-Jewish now. They're all anti-Israel because they get this propaganda on TikTok and other social media things. We've also seen the big upsurge in campuses of, very militant radicalism in the last 2 years. Unite, which is an alliance of local communist groups, plus Islamist groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, the Palestine Youth Movement, etc. So there's a very strong propaganda campaign for the left, which is coming out through social media, through TikTok, etc., to make people hate Jews, hate Israel, etc. And there's another campaign coming mainly from Russia and Iran to get conservatives to also despise Jews and Israel by spreading malicious rumors, unbacked accusations, and downright lies. This is probably one of the biggest propaganda campaigns we've seen in the world, actually, aimed at Israel right now. And it's been done through social media, driven by foreign actors, particularly Russia, China, Iran, and Muslim Brotherhood type operations.
So, Trevor, you're saying these anti-Semitic incidents is a result of propaganda, whether it's from China or another country. Would it be correct to say that then these incidents are not actually organic, in the sense that if we didn't get propaganda from China, then these events in the Middle East would not translate into anti-Jewish sentiments in Western societies?
100%. This is a deliberate policy to stir up hatred against Israel, to divide Israel from its Western allies, to isolate Israel. Very, very similar to what was done to Ukraine, actually, but this is probably maybe even a bigger scale. But 100%, you can trace this stuff coming from Russian-backed websites. You can trace it coming from Iranian-backed websites. All these memes that are floating around, the famous meme that Israel had Charlie Kirk killed. Well, you can trace it all back to Russian websites, but it is amplified by mainstream American, by American conservatives and others, without much fact checking going on. But that is the origin of the stuff. It's no accident that October 7th is Putin's birthday right now today, and that Hamas called Vladimir Putin their best friend. This is no accident whatsoever.
Can you put this level of anti-Semitic incidents into perspective for us? How does it compare historically?
Well, it's really, we haven't seen this since World War II. This is happening in every Western country, but particularly Western Europe and the United States. There's a massive campaign harnessing, there's always been this undercurrent of anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish feeling in certain countries, and that's been amplified. But what is happening now, it has been pushed into American and Western conservative movements who've traditionally been pro-Israel. And you're finding it also seeping into the American evangelical movement, which has really been more pro-Israel than many American Jews have been. So, yeah, but this is at historic levels, but it must be understood in terms of an international propaganda campaign very easily traced back to Russia, Iran, China, and Muslim Brotherhood entities. It is not hard to find the source of this stuff.
Okay, Trevor, I've come across a word that, if you wouldn't mind explaining what it means for me. What is the Red-Green Alliance behind the Hamas terror attack?
Well, the Red-Green Alliance is the alliance of communism and Islam. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood, which we've all heard about, was the father of Hamas. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in the 1920s with the help of the Egyptian Communist Party. So this alliance between Islam and communism has gone right back to the beginning. During the Cold War, the Palestine Liberation Organization, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, were openly pro-Marxist, Leninist, pro-Soviet, Soviet-backed organizations. And still today, we're finding Chinese and Russian backing for Hamas and Hezbollah and similar groups. Hezbollah works very closely with the communists of Venezuela, works closely with the Russians, works closely with the Iranians. This is the evil empire all over again. This is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Nicaragua, all of Venezuela, all of these countries on the left-hand side of the axis. And their biggest targets are, of course, Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and the United States, which is why we have so much propaganda out there today, because these countries can't really win militarily. They can only win by dividing the West, by dividing NATO, by dividing America from Israel, by dividing, Canada from the United States, all of this kind of thing, Taiwan from America. This is why we're seeing, and back in the old Soviet days, they were experts at disinformation, but they had to plant stories in newspapers. Now they just put them on the internet. Now they can put something on the internet at 2 o'clock from St. Petersburg, and it's all over America by 5 o'clock that night. They have hundreds, if not thousands of people sitting in rooms coming up with fake news stories, often using real, the logos of real newspapers, fake news stories, and pumping it out 24/7. And if you know what to look for, it's very easy to identify, but most Americans are not trained in this. Most Americans, most Westerners don't really dig deep into the sources. And so this is the war against the West now is much more to do with disinformation. The Russian-Chinese war is much more to do with disinformation right now, setting us up for the kinetic stage later. And Israel right now is in the crosshairs. Israel is the number one target. They need to split Israel from the West. Israel is a very valuable Western ally. If they can destroy Israel, they control the Middle East, they control the Suez Canal. That will be a major victory for the international, for the, what would you call it, the evil empire, Russia, China, Iran, etc. That is one of their main targets right now.
How would you say the Trump administration has approached countering anti-Semitism domestically and abroad?
Well, they're doing it with things like, They are sanctioning universities who allow anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish and anti-Israel feelings and protests on their soil, which is great, which is good. But the real source of this is Russia, Iran, China, Qatar, etc. And so the Trump administration is being tougher with Russia than it was, I must say, but it's still not very tough on China, and actually wants to do deals with Qatar, which is one of the main homes of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it is holding Israel back from finishing Hamas off. So I think the Trump administration's doing some things right here, but it's not getting to the root of the problem. The root of the anti-Semitic problem, which is seeping into the Republican Party, into the MAGA movement, into the evangelical churches of America, is allowing foreign propaganda to flood the internet completely unchecked. That is the real source of the problem, and that's not being addressed.
And just real quick, Trevor, do you think there is any way on the local level, the grassroots level, where communities can, sort of push back against this propaganda? What can regular people do?
Well, regular people can fly Israeli flags. Regular people can counter disinformation on the internet. Regular people can stand up courageously, because if you take a pro-Israel stand on the internet right now, you're going to get hammered. But realize this is bots, realize this is indoctrinated people, and the American people are still largely on the side of Israel. So, we got to be brave and courageous. And that's the thing that is most lacking now. People get intimidated when they get hammered on the internet or hammered on Facebook for saying something truthful or questioning the propaganda narrative. And so I would support these initiatives. You could hold local rallies, like the Ukrainian people have held rallies in support of Ukraine. You can hold, the Jews should be out there right now holding pro-Israel rallies. Absolutely. But then the problem is, in certain cities, you'll get left-wingers attacking them, and the local police will do nothing about it. So, but where you can, we should be very public about where we stand, standing up for what is right here. October 7th was a tragedy. As I said, it was Putin's birthday. Hamas was in Moscow a week before they did the attacks. We know that some of them were trained by Russians in northern Russia and possibly in Africa as well. So we need to understand this is not about anti-Semitism. This is about the global play of the evil empire versus the free West. And they're picking on Israel. They're picking on what they see as the weakest point right now. And we've got to stand against that. We have got to stand with our Western friends.